Smoke jumping began in 1939 and it quickly became the elite of firefighters. Jump out of airplanes, and I've heard it said many times, who would ever want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane? But they jumped into the wildest of the wild, and a lot of times landed in treetops. Sometimes they'd have to let themselves down with that cord, and it might be a 100-foot treetop. Well, smoke jumping has been ever since 1939. It actually started in Winthrop, Washington, and Missoula, Montana. The first practice jump was done out of Winthrop, a place called Parachute Meadows, northeast of Winthrop, by a gentleman by the name of Francis Lufkin, who I had the pleasure of meeting before he passed away. And the first fire jumps were made the same year, 1939, out of Missoula on a fire up the Lolo Creek by Earl Cooley and Ruth Robinson. And I had the pleasure of meeting Earl too when he was in his older years, and he told me about this movie that they helped make when Earl was the jump master at Missoula. It was called The Red Skies of Montana. And it starred Richard Widmark and Jeffrey Hunter, Constance Smith. They were the stars of the screen back in 1950. Well, the producer acquired the help of the smoke jumpers at Missoula to do their deckhands. And when they were staging this area, they were jumping into Palolo Creek. It was in a freshly burned area, and there were snags. And the producer didn't like the angle that the snags, the branches were going up. You know, from the stems, the branches would go up on the sides, and he didn't like the looks of that. So he told Earl Cooley, "Take your men and saw those trees down and plant them upside down for me." So it satisfied the movie crew, and when you see that movie today, it was run for years and years. It's still being run at the smoke jump base in Missoula. You have to look real hard to see if there's anything wrong with the direction those trees are, because they chopped the scene off just below where the tops of the trees were sawed into. A little bit of trivia about movies, how they're made. The Smoke Chaser pack was, there had to have been 20 to 40 of them hanging on the racks at every ranger station back in my day. One-man fire department. They contained a shovel that came apart, the handle came off, make it easier to haul. It had a Pulaski, and it had a backpack pump, trombone pump. It had a canteen, first aid kit, headlamp, and rations for 2 days. Sea rations. And they were on the scene from the 1920 until 1980 and beyond. But every fire warehouse had them. They're on a backpack board. Oh, this right here they were. And that was how we fought fires back in the day. This is, it's called a CL415. It's made by Bombardier in Canada, and it's the most modern airplane in the fleets today. It's a prop jet. Aeroflight Corporation out here at Spokane Airport has 4 of them, and they're $40 million a piece. And all they do is scoop water out of the lakes and drop it on trees. There valuable piece of machinery. The Ford Trimotor was first smoke jump plane, and they were jumping out of Missoula in those. And it was a good plane because it would fly real slow. It would land on a dime almost, and it would I think it would haul 9 smoke jumpers. And from there, they went to the DC-3, which is this guy. The DC-3 was a smoke jump plane until just a couple of years ago, under a modified version of it where they had turboprop engines. And they just, it's only been about 4 or 5 years ago that they quit using the DC-3. The rest of these airplanes are just models of planes that have been used to firefighting. This is the PBY. It's a retired Navy patrol plane, rescue plane, and there was one stationed at Deer Park, Washington for 20-some years. The first one got hit a hard spot on a wave on the Columbia River up by Northport and crashed. Killed the pilot and co-pilot, because see how the engines are right in the back of the cab? Right behind the pilot and co-pilot. When it hit the wave, it sheared the plane off right behind them. And of course we lost those two. But that next plane, Tanker 85, was flown by Eric Johnson out of Deer Park. It's the model of Tanker 85 for 20 years. And Eric could tell you stories you would not believe of encounters that he had with jet skiers that raced out in front of him and he had to kill the engine, and get stuck on mud flats, and some of the dangers that they've gone through in flying that as a scooper plane. It held about 1,000 gallons of water and could fly real slow over lakes, and we have a lot of lakes around the Spokane, northeast Washington, where it works great. All the rest of these are retardant bombers from World War II vintage. It's a B-24. There's a B-25, B-26, and over here is B-17. They were all really good retardant planes. And the B-17 would hold about 1,000 gallons. They have planes now that hold 3,000 gallons, mostly prop jets and jets. The props are going away. It'd be all jets here. No, not next year. C-119, that's an interesting airplane. I worked with those in the Air Force, and when one engine died, you could not fly the airplane. It just flat out wouldn't fly. And one of them came in with a bad engine to the Del Rio Airport, where I was stationed, Laughlin Air Force Base, that was the home of the U-2 spy plane.